"Mom, I came to pick you up." Zach's cheerful voice echoed through the television station lobby, instantly washing away the exhaustion on Emma's face after a long day at work. The little boy ran straight toward her and wrapped his arms around her legs. Emma smiled, crouched down, and pulled him into a warm hug. A few steps behind them, Winter watched with a smile. Zach had spent the entire afternoon begging his grandmother to bring him to the station because he wanted to surprise his mom after work. Neither of them noticed the man standing across the lobby. Malik had just finished a meeting with the station executives when his eyes landed on Emma and the little boy in her arms. He froze. There was something strangely familiar about the child. The shape of his eyes, the smile, even the way he tilted his head. Without thinking, Malik walked toward them. "Emma," he called softly. Emma looked up, and the smile on her face disappeared the instant she recognized him. "Who is this little boy?" Malik asked, unable to take his eyes off the child. Emma instinctively tightened her grip on Zach's hand. "He's a relative of mine," she replied, avoiding Malik's gaze. "We should get going." She turned and started to walk away, but Malik reached out and gently caught her wrist. His eyes remained fixed on Zach. "Emma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't tell me. He's my son." Emma slowly turned back to face him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was answer enough. Emma had always known this day would come. She just never imagined the secret she had kept hidden for 5 long years would be exposed in a moment like this. It was 10 o'clock at night. Emma still stood outside the towering iron gates of the mansion. Light spilled through the narrow gaps in the metal bars, stretching long, cold shadows across the pavement. Inside, the garden was brightly lit, with voices drifting back and forth in the distance. Outside, she stood alone, her hands ice-cold despite the warm June night. Malik had promised to bring Zach home before 7 o'clock. She called him for the first time at 6:30. He said they were on their way home. At 6:50, he texted that traffic was backed up. By 7:15, he stopped answering his phone. At 8 o'clock, Emma received a short message. "Zach is staying with me tonight." She called back at once. Malik answered after the 5th ring. "Where's Zach?" "He's inside the house. Don't worry." His voice was calm enough to make her blood run cold. "I asked where my son is. I already told you. He's here. He's safe." Emma tightened her grip on the phone. "You promised to bring him back before 7. I'm only keeping him for one night. You don't get to decide that on your own." Silence filled the line for a few seconds before Malik spoke again. "You've had him with you for almost 5 years. Is one night with his father really too much to ask?" Emma had prepared herself for this possibility. Ever since she agreed to let Malik see Zach, she had reminded herself to stay cautious. She saved every text message, kept records of every pickup and drop-off time, and even told Zach never to leave the playground unless he called her first. Even so, she chose to trust Malik. She had placed her son in his father's hands for one day. "Listen carefully," Emma said, her voice low. "I let you see Zach because I believed you wanted to be a good father, not because I gave you permission to punish me. I'm not punishing anyone. Then bring him home. Tomorrow. Now. It's late. He's already asleep." A child's crying drifted through the phone. At first it came in broken sobs, then it grew clearer, filled with panic. "Mom, I want to go home." Emma stopped breathing for a moment. "Zach!" The cry burst from her lips, loud enough that the security guard inside the gate turned around. The call ended. She dialed again. No answer. Emma walked up to the gate and faced the guard. "Open the gate. My son is in there." The man avoided her eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't." "Who says you can't?" "I'm following instructions. I'm his mother." Emma struck the iron gate with both hands. "Zach!" From inside the mansion, she heard his voice again. "Mom!" She rushed toward the gate without thinking. The guard stepped in front of her. "Please stay calm. Move. I can't let you in." Emma looked through the gate. For a split second, the silhouette of a small child appeared behind a first-floor window before disappearing again. She couldn't tell whether it was Zach, but that brief glimpse was enough to tighten every muscle in her chest. She stepped back, unlocked her phone, called the person she needed to call, and saved every message she had exchanged with Malik. Her hands shook, but her voice remained steady. "My son's father picked him up this morning. He promised to bring him home before 7 tonight, but he's refusing to return him. I'm standing outside his house. They won't let me inside, and my son is crying for his mother." As she spoke, her eyes never left the mansion's front door. Nearly 6 years earlier, Emma had stood outside this same mansion once before. Back then, her son wasn't inside. The man she believed she could love for the rest of her life was. Emma met Malik during the filming of a weekend business program. His family's company was the show's main sponsor, and she was the host. Malik arrived almost 30 minutes late. The top 2 buttons of his dress shirt were undone. A phone was in one hand while his assistant hurried behind him carrying a stack of documents. The moment he walked in, he asked, "Where is she?" Emma was standing less than 10 feet away. She wore a cream-colored suit and held a script covered with red editing marks. One of the crew members pointed toward her. Malik turned, paused for a brief look, then smiled. "I thought the host would be older." Emma didn't return the smile. "I thought the guest would arrive on time." The room fell silent. Malik didn't seem offended. If anything, he looked amused. During the recording, he kept drifting away from the script. His answers ran longer than scheduled, and he kept turning serious questions into jokes. Anyone else would have thrown the entire program off track. Emma never let him take control. Each time he wandered too far, she pulled the conversation back with a short, direct question. By the end of the show, everything had stayed exactly where it needed to be. After filming, Malik waited for her in the hallway. "You're good at this." Emma checked her phone before answering. "Thank you. Are you free tonight?" "No." "You don't even know what I was going to ask." "It doesn't matter. I'm not free." Malik laughed. He was the only son of David, the founder of one of the city's largest real estate companies. Ever since he was young, more people had tried to impress him than reject him. Emma's indifference didn't bruise his pride. It caught his attention. 3 days later, a bouquet arrived at the television station. There was no long message, only a small card. "Busy all week, or just too busy for me?" Emma asked the receptionist to send the flowers back. The next day, Malik came in person. He stood outside her office holding a cup of coffee. "If flowers don't work, maybe coffee will." "I don't drink coffee after 2 in the afternoon." Malik glanced at his watch. "It's only 1:55. Emma looked at him. "You have a lot of free time." "No, I'm making time for something important." "I'm not your important job." "Not yet." Emma closed the folder in front of her. "Malik, I think you've misunderstood something. I don't like being pursued this way." "Then what kind of approach do you like?" The way he switched to a more familiar tone made her frown. "I like people who respect my answer." Malik looked at her for a few seconds. The smile on his face faded. "All right. I won't bother you at work again." He kept that promise for exactly 4 days. On the 5th day, Emma saw him in the elevator of a hotel where she was attending an event. He was alone, dressed neatly, with no flowers and no coffee in his hands. What a coincidence. The hotel belonged in part to his family's company. Emma looked at the floor display. "That's too much of a coincidence." Malik didn't deny it. "You told me not to come to your workplace, so I had to find somewhere else. I told you not to bother me, not to change locations." The elevator doors opened. Emma walked out. Malik followed several steps behind without getting any closer. That evening, heavy rain started after the event ended. The rideshare she requested never arrived. She stood beneath the entrance canopy when Malik stepped out of his car. He handed her an umbrella, then turned to leave. "Don't get the wrong idea," he said. "I just don't want tomorrow's headlines saying the host of my favorite program caught a cold." For the first time, Emma laughed in front of him. Over the following weeks, Malik stopped making such grand gestures. He no longer sent flowers or showed up at the television station without warning. Every now and then, he simply texted to ask if she had eaten or sent her the address of a restaurant, saying she could stop by if she had time. Emma declined most of the invitations, but she no longer turned down every one of them. 2 months later, she agreed to go on a date. During their very first dinner together, Emma made one thing clear. "I don't plan on getting married." Malik had just taken a sip of wine. He looked up and smiled. "We've only just started dating and you're already worried I'll propose? I'm telling you now so you don't waste your time." "You've never wanted to get married?" "Not really. Maybe I just haven't met the right person." Emma looked at him. "Are you listening to what I'm saying, or are you already trying to change my mind?" Malik set his wine glass down. "All right, no marriage. Then let's just enjoy being together." At the time, Both of them believed it would be that simple. Emma believed she could love someone without giving up the life she had built for herself. Malik believed that once she loved him enough, she would change on her own. In the beginning, being with Malik made Emma feel at ease. He knew how to make her laugh. He always seemed to appear after her most exhausting filming days. He didn't mind waiting in his car for hours while she attended meetings, and he never complained when work forced her to cancel their plans. Some nights, Emma didn't leave the station until almost midnight. As soon as she walked outside, she found Malik leaning against his car. "Why are you here?" "To take you home. I drove myself." "Then, leave your car here. I'll bring you back for it tomorrow." "That's unnecessary," Malik smiled. "Loving you has never been convenient." Emma didn't answer, but she still got into his car. The problems began with things that seemed too small to matter. One day, Malik saw Emma wearing a fitted dress on television. He sent her a message. "That dress is too short." Emma read it, but didn't reply. That evening, he showed up at her apartment carrying 2 large shopping bags filled with clothes. "I asked someone to pick these out. They'll look even better on camera." Emma looked at the dresses spread across her couch. "Did I ask you to buy them?" "No, they're a gift." "Then thank you, but take them back." Malik thought she was only uncomfortable accepting expensive gifts. He pulled out one of the dresses. "Try this one. It's more modest, and it still looks great." Emma looked at him. "What I wear isn't your decision. I'm only making a suggestion. One suggestion is enough. Bringing over an entire wardrobe isn't a suggestion anymore." Malik frowned. "Do you always have to react like this? I'm your boyfriend. What's wrong with wanting you to look your best? I never asked whether you thought I looked good. You're the one turning a small issue into something bigger. No. You're the one making this into a fight. You're trying to interfere with the way I live." On another occasion, Malik called while Emma was having dinner with a male coworker after filming. When he learned who she was with, he fell silent for a second before asking, "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's work." "What kind of work requires dinner alone with another man?" "He's the show's producer. We're revising the script." "You could do that at the station." Emma set her fork down. "Are you questioning me?" "I just want to know." "Do you want to know, or do you want to control me?" Malik didn't answer. Their disagreements built up little by little. The more he feared losing her, the more he tried to pull her closer. The more she felt herself being pulled, the more she wanted to step away. The final argument began after Malik called Emma's manager without telling her. He asked that her late-night filming schedule be reduced because he believed she was working too much. Emma didn't find out until her department manager asked, "Is your boyfriend your manager now?" That night, she went straight to Malik's house. "Why did you call my manager?" "I was only talking to him." "Who gave you the right?" "You've been working past midnight for weeks. I was worried about you. If you're worried, you can talk to me. And would you listen?" "Whether I listen or not is my decision." Malik stood up. "In this relationship, everything is always about what you want." Emma looked at him. "Then what is it that you want?" "I want the right to care about you. I want to know where you are, what you're doing, who you're with. I want to be part of the decisions you make. Caring about someone doesn't give you the right to make decisions for them." Malik stared at her. "You've never really treated me like the man you love." His words struck the one truth Emma had always tried to avoid. Maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. She had let him into her life, but she had always left herself a way out. She loved him, yet she never wanted to depend on him. She didn't want to be tied down, and she had never promised him a future. But her decision not to get married didn't give him the right to control her life. "I told you who I was from the very beginning." Emma held his gaze. "You were the one who believed I'd change." She let out a faint smile without any warmth. "Then you never loved the real me. You loved the woman you imagined I'd become one day." Malik said nothing. "If the only reason we're still together is because we're both waiting for the other person to change, then we should stop here." He turned his face away. "If that's what you want." Emma remained where she was for a few seconds. Part of her hoped he would ask her to stay. Not by locking the door or grabbing her hand, but by calmly asking them to sit down and talk one more time. Malik never spoke. Emma walked away. For the next 2 months, Emma and Malik had no contact. Emma discovered she was pregnant after finishing a live broadcast. She had barely made it through the opening lines before her throat tightened. The smell of makeup beneath the studio lights made her stomach churn. She forced herself to stay until the program ended, then hurried straight to the restroom. One of her coworkers followed and stopped outside the door. "Do you need to go to the hospital?" "It's probably just my stomach," Emma answered, though she didn't believe it herself. Her period was already nearly 3 weeks late. That night, She bought 2 pregnancy tests from 2 different pharmacies. Both showed positive. Emma sat on the bathroom floor for a long time without moving. The first thing that came to her mind wasn't Malik. It was her career. Her schedule for the coming months was already full. She was being considered to host a new television program. If she was pregnant, every plan she had made would change. Only after that did she think about the baby. She rested a hand on her stomach, even though she couldn't feel anything yet. A new life had begun from a relationship she had just chosen to leave behind. The next morning, Emma went to Piedmont Augusta Hospital. After examining her, the doctor explained that she had a uterine condition. The pregnancy would need close monitoring, and if she lost this baby, the chances of becoming pregnant again could be very low. "Can I have some time to think about it?" she asked. "Of course. But you need to be very careful from now on. The baby is developing, but your body will need extra support." Emma left the examination room holding the medical report in her hands. In the hallway, a young woman sat beside her husband. The man bent down to tie his wife's shoelace before handing her a bottle of water. Emma watched them for a few seconds, then walked away. She barely slept over the next 3 days. She thought about raising a child alone, the way people at work would look at her, and the possibility of leaving the television studio. She wondered what Winter would say. Then her thoughts returned to the tiny image she had seen on the ultrasound screen. On the 3rd night, Emma sat at her desk, opened her work calendar, and deleted each plan one by one. She decided to keep the baby. Not because she wanted Malik back, not because she believed a child would change him. She chose to keep the baby because it was her decision. No matter how determined she was, Emma understood one thing. The baby wasn't hers alone. Malik had the right to know. She sent him a message. "Do you have time tomorrow? I need to talk to you." Malik replied almost immediately, "Yes." He reserved a table at the same restaurant where they had gone on their first date. When Emma arrived, flowers were already on the table beside 2 small candles. The moment she sat down, Malik asked, "Do you want to get back together?" Emma took the medical report from her bag and placed it in front of him. "I'm pregnant." The smile disappeared from Malik's face. He looked at the report, then at her. "Are you sure?" "I've already seen the doctor. Is the baby mine?" Emma said nothing. Malik realized what he had just asked. "That's not what I meant." He picked up the report and read it again and again. "How far along are you?" "Almost 9 weeks." "Why are you only telling me now?" "I just found out." Malik leaned back in his chair. He didn't smile. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't ask how she was feeling. He simply sat there with a tense expression. "I wasn't ready." Emma looked at him. "Neither was I." Malik lowered his eyes. "We just broke up. Everything happened too fast. I never thought about getting married. I don't even know how to be a father." Every word he said made sense. Emma nodded. "I understand." She picked up her bag and stood. Malik reached for her wrist. "Where are you going?" "Home." "We're not finished talking. You've already said enough. I just need some time to think. I didn't come here to force you to marry me." "Then what are you going to do?" Emma looked straight at him. "Raise the baby by yourself?" "If I have to." Malik slowly let go of her hand. Emma walked out of the restaurant without looking back. That night, he called her more than 10 times. She didn't answer. The next morning, Malik was waiting outside her apartment. He wasn't carrying flowers. There was no ring in his hand. As soon as Emma opened the door, he spoke. "I'm sorry." She didn't respond. "I panicked yesterday. I said things I shouldn't have said. But those were only my first thoughts. They weren't my final decision." Emma met his eyes. When something unexpected happens, the first reaction is usually the most honest one. Malik stepped closer. "They'll take responsibility. I don't need you to take responsibility as if you're paying off a debt." "Then what do you want me to do?" Emma looked at the man standing in front of her. Just 1 day earlier, she had believed he could still become a good father even if they never got back together. She wasn't sure anymore. "I want you to figure out what you really want." Malik remained silent. A few days later, he came back. This time, he said he had thought everything through. He wanted to marry her and raise the baby together. He also wanted to take her home to meet his parents. Emma agreed. Not because of a proposal or the promise of a wedding. She wanted to see whether, when he stood in front of his family, Malik would choose her or the life he had always known. In the end, she agreed to go with him to meet his parents. Malik's family mansion stood behind a long row of trees, separated from the main road by a tall stone wall. During the drive, Malik glanced at Emma's dress several times. At last, he spoke. "Maybe we should stop by a store and pick out something else for you to wear." Emma turned to him. "Why? My mom is pretty traditional. What's wrong with my dress?" "Nothing's wrong with it. It's just a little short." Emma looked down at herself. The dress fell above her knees. It was simple and far from revealing. "I think it's perfectly fine." Malik kept his eyes on the road. "I know, but it's your first time meeting my parents. Could you just go along with it this once?" Emma looked at him. "If I have to pretend to be someone else just to be accepted, what's the point of this visit?" Malik let out a quiet breath. "Here we go again." "Again? You always take every suggestion as if someone's trying to control you." Emma turned toward the window. By the time the car stopped in front of the mansion, she already had a bad feeling. Bella sat in the center of the living room with a stern expression. David sat beside her with one hand resting on his cane, even though his health had long since recovered. Malik introduced them. "Mom, Dad, this is Emma." Emma gave a polite nod. "It's nice to meet you." Bella looked her over from head to toe. "How old are you?" 30. Bella's brow tightened slightly. "What do you do?" "I'm a television host and producer." "So you're on television often?" "Yes," David spoke next. "Is your job stable?" "I've been doing it for almost 8 years." "Does it pay well?" Malik cut in. "Dad, why are you asking her all that?" David looked at his son. "I'm talking to her." Emma folded her hands on her lap. "I earn enough to support myself." David gave a faint smile. "After you're married, you won't need to work anymore." Emma wondered if she had heard him correctly. "What do you mean? Our family doesn't need the money." "A daughter-in-law in this family doesn't belong in front of television cameras where strangers judge her. You'll stay home, take care of your husband and children, and handle family responsibilities," Emma answered without hesitation. "I have no intention of quitting my job." The atmosphere in the room changed at once. Bella set her teacup down. "Is your career more important than your family? I don't believe the two have to compete with each other." Bella looked at her steadily. "This family has its own rules." Emma turned to Malik. He avoided her eyes for a brief moment before speaking. "Emma, my parents only want what's best for you. Just give it some thought. You want me to quit too, don't you?" "I didn't say that. But after we have a child, you'll probably need to cut back on work." Emma's hand paused for a moment. She was afraid he might mention the pregnancy. Malik continued. "You've worked hard for years. Taking a break wouldn't be a bad thing. Once you're part of this family, you won't have to worry about money anymore." Emma looked at him for a long time. "I've never wanted someone else to provide for me." David's face darkened. "Is that how you speak to my son?" Emma stood up. "Please excuse me. I'm leaving." Malik rose with her. "Emma, don't make this bigger than it is." She turned back. "I'm making it bigger? Or is your family planning out my future as if I don't have the right to decide for myself?" "No one is deciding for you." "Then why hasn't anyone asked me how I want to live my life?" Emma walked out of the mansion. Malik caught up with her before she reached the gate. "Go back inside and apologize to my parents." Emma stopped. "For what?" "For your attitude." "What about theirs? Would it really hurt you to give in this once?" "If we're going to live together, you'll have everything you could ever want. There are plenty of people who would love to be in your position." Emma looked at him with tired eyes. "Do you really think being chosen by you is the greatest thing that could ever happen to me?" "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant." Malik reached for her shoulder. "I just want everyone to get along." Emma removed his hand. "Then you should find someone who's willing to stay silent just to keep the peace. That person isn't me." 2 days later, Bella asked Emma to meet her at a tea shop near the television station. Emma planned to decline, but Bella sent one more message. "It's about the baby." Emma arrived 10 minutes early. Bella was already waiting. She didn't waste any time. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" Emma kept her expression unchanged. "Why would you think that?" "I'm a woman. I can tell. That's my private matter." Bella looked directly at her. "If that baby is Malik's, then it isn't a private matter anymore." Emma rested one hand beneath the table. "What do you want?" "If the child belongs to our family, the baby should be raised by our family." Emma held Bella's gaze. "What about the child's mother?" Bella didn't hesitate. "If you're willing to cooperate, we can make arrangements." "What kind of arrangements?" You aren't suitable to become a daughter-in-law in this family, but we won't treat you unfairly. We'll give you enough money to start a different life." Emma smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Are you offering to buy my child?" "I'm offering you an easier path." "And if I refuse?" Bella took a sip of tea. "You're an unmarried woman whose career depends on public image. If certain things become public, how much longer do you think you'll be able to stay on television?" Emma remained silent. Bella continued in the same calm voice. "Raising a child takes more than love. It takes money, connections, and a stable family. If people had to choose, who do you think they'd trust to provide a better future for that child?" Bella never raised her voice. She never spoke harshly. Yet Emma understood every word. Malik's family didn't want her. They only wanted the baby. Emma stood up. Bella called after her. "Think carefully. Don't wait until you've lost both your career and your child before you regret this." After leaving the tea shop, Emma walked for a long time. Her hand rested on her stomach. For the first time since deciding to keep the baby, she felt real fear. Malik had promised he would protect her, yet when she met his parents, he couldn't even protect her right to keep her job. If his parents decided to take the baby, would he really stand against them? Or would he ask her, once again, to give in so everyone else could have peace? 3 days later, Malik stood outside Emma's apartment. He wore a white dress shirt with his hair neatly combed. In his hand was a small box. "Can we talk?" Emma stepped aside and let him in. Malik stopped in the middle of the living room and opened the box. Inside was an engagement ring. "I'm sorry about the other day. I talked to my parents. They need time, but they'll come around." Emma looked at the ring without reaching for it. "Are you sure?" "I am." "What if they never accept me?" Malik paused. "We'll keep trying to convince them." "What if they insist that I quit my job?" He didn't answer right away. Emma continued. "What if they try to take my child?" The smile disappeared from his face. "Why would you ask that?" Emma knew that if she told him Bella had already come to see her, everything might change. She also knew Malik would confront his mother. Bella would either deny everything or tell him she had only been trying to protect the family. In the end, Malik might ask Emma to give in one more time. She couldn't risk her child on that hope. "The baby is gone." Malik stood there without moving. "What did you say?" "I lost the baby." He slowly closed the ring box. "When?" "After the day I met your parents." "Why didn't you tell me? What would have been the point?" "I'm the baby's father." Emma looked at him. "You were the one who said you weren't ready." Malik's voice dropped. "I changed my mind. Now it's too late." He took a step toward her. "Are you saying this because of what I said at the restaurant?" "I'm not blaming you." "Then why are you so calm?" Emma pressed her fingernails into her palm to keep her voice steady. "Crying won't bring the baby back." Malik looked at her for a long time. His eyes slowly turned red. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" Emma didn't answer. Malik placed the ring box on the table. "If you never want to see me again, I won't come back." He walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped with his back still facing her. "I really did want to marry you." The door closed behind him. Emma remained standing in the middle of the living room. Only after the elevator doors closed in the hallway did her knees give way. One hand wrapped around her stomach while the other covered her mouth to keep herself from making a sound. "I'm sorry," she whispered. She didn't know whether she was apologizing to the child for saying the baby was gone or for deciding, from that moment on, to take away the chance to grow up with a father. Over the next several months, Emma stepped down from her role as a live television host. She told the station that her health wasn't in good condition and that she needed to move behind the scenes for a while. The outfits she once wore on camera were replaced by loose-fitting clothes. Her public appearances became less frequent. Winter was the only person who knew the truth. At first, she sat in silence for a long time before asking, "You're really going to have this baby?" "Yes." "By yourself?" "Yes." "Where's the baby's father?" "He doesn't know." Winter looked at her daughter with a mix of anger and heartache. "Do you think raising a child is going to be easy?" "No." "Then why are you hiding this?" Emma rested a hand on the small curve of her growing belly. "Because if they find out, they might take the baby away from me." Winter didn't ask another question. From that day on, she moved in with her daughter. Emma's pregnancy wasn't easy. She often suffered from stomach pain, had to limit how much she walked, and was admitted to the hospital several times for monitoring. Some nights she woke up in fear and kept her hand on her stomach until she felt a gentle kick before she could close her eyes again. She had once believed she didn't need a family. But as the baby grew inside her, she began to understand that a family didn't have to mean a husband, a big house, and a complete household. Sometimes a family was simply an aging mother sitting beside her bed peeling fruit, scolding her stubborn daughter while waking up every night to check whether she was in pain. Sometimes it was an unborn child who made her realize, for the first time, that she feared losing someone else more than losing herself. Emma went into labor earlier than expected and had to undergo a C-section. Before she was taken into the operating room, she held Winter's hand. "If anything happens, nothing is going to happen." Winter cut her off. "Both you and my grandson are coming through this safe." Emma gave a weak smile. When she opened her eyes again, the first thing she heard was the cry of a baby. A nurse carried the newborn over to her. "Here's your son." Emma looked at his rosy face, his eyes still closed, and his tiny hand curled into a fist. She touched one finger against his hand. The baby wrapped his fingers around hers at once. Tears rolled down the side of Emma's face. "Zach." Winter stood beside the bed. "Is that his name?" "Yes. Zach. He'll take your last name?" Emma nodded. "Yes." No one mentioned Malik. 7 days later, Emma carried Zach out of Piedmont Augusta Hospital. The morning sun was warm. Winter walked beside her, carrying a bag in one hand while reminding her to keep the baby's face covered with the other. Emma looked down at Zach, sleeping peacefully in her arms. She knew life would become much harder from that day forward. She would have to return to work. People would ask questions she didn't know how to answer. There would be nights when Zach got sick and she would be the only one awake beside him. One day, he would ask who his father was, and the lie she had created would no longer be enough. But at that moment, Emma couldn't think that far ahead. She only held her son a little closer as she walked down the hospital steps. Behind her was the love she had buried with her own hands. Ahead of her was the child she had protected at any cost. Nearly 5 years later, Emma returned to the television studio to host a late afternoon program. It was no longer the network's flagship show, with its large studio, massive screens, and production crew of dozens. Her new program lasted only 30 minutes and focused on everyday life. Most of the guests were ordinary people. The makeup room was smaller, the production team had fewer staff members, and her name was no longer featured prominently on promotional posters. Yet Emma didn't feel the sense of loss she had once expected. 5 years earlier, she had believed losing that opportunity meant the end of her career. After Zach was born, she realized that sometimes life took something away, not to punish her, but to make room for her to rebuild. She started over behind the scenes, writing scripts, editing programs, and coaching new hosts. When Zach was a little over 3 years old, she filled in for a host who had gone on maternity leave. Viewers still remembered her, and the program received a warm response. After that, she was given a permanent time slot of her own. She no longer earned as much as she once had, but it was enough to pay the rent, cover Zach's tuition, and handle the household expenses. On days when filming ran late, Winter picked Zach up from preschool. On ordinary days, Emma took him to school herself before heading to the station in time for the morning meeting. Life remained busy, but it had found its rhythm. Emma woke up at 6 every morning. At 6:15, Zach usually pulled the blanket over his head. By 6:30, she had to call his name for the third time before he finally sat up, his hair sticking up in every direction while his eyes were still half closed. That morning was no different. Emma stood outside his bedroom with her arms crossed. "Zach, I'm counting to 3. A sleepy voice came from beneath the blanket. "School's closed today. Today is Wednesday. My teacher said Wednesday is a day off. What's your teacher's name?" The blanket stayed still for a few seconds. "Ms. Lane." Emma smiled. "Your teacher's name is Ms. Harper. Ms. Lane teaches the class next door." Zach slowly peeked out from under the blanket. "The teacher next door can't give you the day off." He sat up with pillow marks still pressed into his cheeks. "You don't love me." Emma walked over and pulled his pajama shirt back down over his stomach. "I love you, so I'm making sure you go to school. Grandma loves me more. She lets me sleep until 8. And every time she does, I'm the one who has to explain it to your teacher." Zach thought about that for a moment. You could just tell my teacher. Emma couldn't help smiling. Go brush your teeth. Zach climbed out of bed. After taking a few steps, he turned back. Can I have eggs for breakfast? Sure. Cut them into little pieces. I know. And don't leave the yolk runny. I know. And I don't want cold milk. Emma gave his shoulder a gentle push toward the bathroom. I've been taking care of you for almost 5 years. Do you think today is the first day we've met? Zach laughed and ran down the hallway. Emma remained in the small bedroom. The walls were covered with drawings Zach had made since he first learned to hold a crayon. Some were nothing more than 3 uneven circles. Others showed 2 people standing beside a small green house. The taller figure had long hair. The smaller one held a ball. There was never a man in any of those pictures. When Zach turned 3, he asked, "Where's my dad?" Emma had prepared herself for that question many times. But when it finally came, none of the answers she had rehearsed felt right. She didn't want to tell him his father had died. She didn't want to tell him his father had abandoned them. In the end, she simply said, "Your dad lives somewhere else." Zach asked, "Does he know about me?" Emma didn't answer. Her silence gave him an answer of its own. From that day on, he never asked again. Sometimes Emma wondered if she had really protected her son, or merely postponed the hurt until another day. Yet every time she remembered the look in Bella's eyes at the tea shop years ago, she couldn't completely regret her decision. She had lied to Malik, and she knew it was wrong. But if she were taken back to that time, pregnant, alone, with no money, no connections, and no one to protect her, she wasn't sure she would choose differently. That afternoon, Emma finished filming nearly 40 minutes later than planned. The guest on the program was a single mother who worked as a delivery driver. During the interview, the woman talked about having to send her child to live with relatives because she couldn't afford childcare. Near the end of the interview, she broke down in tears, forcing the recording to pause until she regained her composure. By the time filming wrapped up, it was almost 6 o'clock. Emma removed her microphone and called Winter. "Mom, did you pick Zach up?" "I did. We're at the grocery store." "Don't buy him any ice cream." "I wasn't planning to." In the background, Zach's voice rang out. "Grandma, can I get the chocolate one?" Emma let out a sigh. "Mom, don't listen to him. One popsicle isn't going to hurt anybody. He was coughing yesterday." "Fine, we won't buy it." Zach protested right away. "Mom, you're mean." Emma smiled. "We'll talk about it tonight." She ended the call, picked up her bag, and left the studio. The hallway was as quiet as it usually was at the end of the day. Several offices had already gone dark. Emma walked while checking messages from the production team and didn't notice someone standing ahead of her. It wasn't until she heard someone call her name that she stopped. "Emma." Her footsteps came to a halt. Some voices stayed with you no matter how many years had passed. She looked up. Malik was standing at the end of the hallway. He wore a dark suit with his jacket draped over one arm. His hair was shorter than before, and the arrogance that once filled his face had faded. But his eyes hadn't changed. The moment Emma looked at them, she remembered the apartment years earlier, the ring box resting on the table, and the last words he spoke before walking away. "I really did want to marry you." During the past 5 years, Emma had imagined this reunion many times. Sometimes she thought she would be angry. Sometimes she thought she would be afraid. But now that Malik was standing in front of her, the first thing she felt was emptiness. "When did you get back?" The question came out more calmly than she expected. 3 days ago. I heard you've been working overseas." "I have." He took a few steps closer. "You're hosting again?" "A small program. I've watched it." "Are you here for work?" "I'm working with the network on a new project." Emma nodded. "Then you should talk to the department in charge." She started to walk past him, but Malik spoke again. "You don't want to ask me anything?" Emma stopped without turning around. "You got married." "I have my own life now. There's nothing left for us to ask each other." "You know I'm married?" Malik asked. "That isn't exactly a secret." He fell silent. Emma continued walking. She had only gone a few steps when a child's voice echoed from the elevator. "Mom!" Zach ran toward her. Winter followed behind him, carrying 2 grocery bags. Emma froze. She hadn't known her mother was bringing Zach to the television station. Winter had planned to take him home, but the grocery store was close to the station, so she decided to stop by and wait for Emma to finish work. Zach ran straight to his mother and wrapped his arms around her leg. "Grandma wouldn't let me buy ice cream." Emma smiled. She made the right decision, but I'm not coughing anymore. Who was coughing this morning? Zach lowered his head. I was pretending. Emma bent down and straightened his collar. Did you say goodbye to the security guard? Yes. Did you say hello to everyone here? Zach looked up. That was when he noticed Malik standing a few steps away. Malik didn't move. His eyes stayed on the little boy's face. Zach had Emma's eyes, but the bridge of his nose, the shape of his eyebrows, and even the slight tilt of his head as he looked at a stranger were so much like Malik's that it was impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Malik stared at him for a long moment. Zach grew uncomfortable under his gaze and moved closer to his mother. Mom, who is that? Emma felt her hand grow cold. An old friend. Malik took one step forward. What's your name? Zach looked at his mother before answering. Zach, how old are you? Emma cut in at once. It's getting late. We should go. She reached for Zach's hand. Malik looked at her. I only asked how old he is. You don't need to know. The answer came too quickly. Whatever suspicion had been forming in his mind became certainty. Winter looked from one of them to the other. Her expression changed. She pulled Zach closer. Come here. Zach was still looking at Malik. I'm almost 5. The hallway fell silent. Malik turned back to Emma. Almost 5? She said nothing. What month was he born? Malik, tell me. What month was he born? Winter stepped in front of her daughter. If you have questions, ask another day. Don't frighten the child. Malik looked at Winter and recognized her immediately. More than 5 years earlier, he had stood outside Emma's apartment and seen her from a distance before walking away. At the time, he hadn't had the courage to ask how Emma was coping after losing the baby. Now a little boy, almost 5 years old, stood right in front of him. The boy looked like him. He moved like him. And Emma was doing everything she could to keep him away from it. Malik's voice turned hoarse. Whose son is he? Emma answered without hesitation. That has nothing to do with you. She took Zach's hand and started walking. Malik reached for her wrist. Emma pulled away at once. Don't touch me. Zach clung to his mother. Mom. Malik looked at the boy's frightened face, then at the way Emma instinctively shielded him. After a long moment, he took a step back. Fine. I won't ask anything else today. Emma didn't believe that calm tone. Malik looked straight at her. But you know I'm not going to let this go. That night, Zach lay in bed wide awake. Emma sat beside him and read an entire storybook, but he kept staring at the ceiling. She closed the book. What's wrong? Zach turned to look at her. Was that man this afternoon a bad person? Emma looked at him. Why would you ask that? Then why were you scared of him? The question caught her off guard. I wasn't scared. Zach lowered his eyes to the small hand resting on top of his blanket. You were holding my hand really tight. Children might not understand the problems adults carried, but they always noticed the things adults tried to hide. Emma gently smoothed his hair. He was someone I knew a long time ago, Zach thought for a moment. Like Miss Harper used to know the principal? Emma smiled despite herself. Not exactly. Then who is he? She didn't answer. Zach waited quietly before asking the question that had been on his mind. Is he my dad? Emma couldn't hide her reaction. Zach's eyes widened. He is, isn't he? Emma still couldn't speak. Who told you that? Nobody. He looked at her. He looked at me the same way Grandma looks at my baby pictures. Emma turned her face away. She had believed she still had a few more years before Zach would be old enough to understand that adults sometimes made painful choices because they were afraid. But Malik had returned, and after seeing the boy only once, he had already sensed the truth between them. Emma brushed her fingers through Zach's hair. Go to sleep. I'll tell you when the time is right. Zach didn't ask another question. He turned over and hugged his teddy bear. It took a long time before his breathing finally became slow and steady. After Zach fell asleep, Emma stayed beside his bed for a while longer. When she stepped out of the room, she found Winter standing in the living room. He asked, didn't he? Emma nodded. How long are you planning to keep hiding the truth? Emma sat down on the couch. I don't know. That man only looked at him once and started to figure it out. You won't be able to hide this much longer. He doesn't know for sure yet. Winter looked at her daughter. Who are you trying to convince, me or yourself? Emma said nothing. Winter sat down beside her. Back then, you were afraid they would take your baby away. I understood that. But Zach isn't a baby anymore. Malik is his father. Sooner or later, he'll find out. Emma looked at her mother. So what do you want me to do? Hand Zach over to them? That's not what I'm saying. Winter let out a quiet sigh. They have money, lawyers, and connections. If they decide they want him, you'll find yourself living with the same fear you had more than 5 years ago. Emma lowered her eyes. That fear never went away. Winter reached over and rested a hand on her daughter's shoulder. But you're not the frightened young woman who was hiding her pregnancy anymore. You have a job. People have watched you raise Zach. He's not a newborn who can simply be carried away. Emma looked toward Zach's bedroom door. Do you really think any of that will matter to them? I don't know what they'll do, Winter answered honestly. But I do know this. The longer you keep hiding the truth, the more you'll make yourself look like the one who's done something wrong. Emma kept staring at the closed bedroom door. I already have. The next morning, Malik was waiting outside Emma's apartment building. Emma had just helped Zach into Winter's car when she spotted him. She told her mother to take Zach to school first, then walk toward Malik. Have you been following me? I didn't have to. This address wasn't hard to find. What do you want? Malik watched the car disappear through the gate. I want to know who that little boy is. I've already told you. He has nothing to do with you. He's almost 5 years old. There are plenty of children who are almost 5. He looks like me. Emma met his eyes. You're giving yourself too much credit. Malik let out a short laugh, but there was no amusement in it. You're still just as good at lying. He took another step closer. You don't have any proof, do you? Then look me in the eye and tell me he isn't my son. Emma didn't answer. Go ahead. I don't owe you an explanation. Then why can't you say it? Emma tried to walk away, but Malik stepped in front of her. When you told me the baby was gone, how far along were you? Move. Almost 3 months. Emma looked at him. Move. If the baby was born full term, he'd be exactly that age now. Emma's expression hardened. You're married now. Why are you digging up the past? Because it isn't the past to me. His voice grew heavier. If he's my son, you had no right to make that decision by yourself. Emma stared at him. What did you just say? You had no right to hide him from me for almost 5 years. Emma's eyes turned cold. The day I needed to know whether you were ready to be a father, you told me you weren't. The day I went to your parents' house, you asked me to give in to them. Then your mother came to see me. She told me they wanted the baby, not the mother. Tell me, what was I supposed to do? Malik stopped speaking. My mother came to see you? She knew I was pregnant. She wanted the child. She didn't want me. Why didn't you tell me? So you could do what? Go home, argue with your mother, then come back and tell me I'd misunderstood? Malik shook his head. You never gave me the chance. I gave you that chance the day I met your family. Emma looked straight at him. You stood beside your parents and asked me to give in. You didn't know what they were planning. No, I didn't. Exactly. And because you didn't know, I couldn't trust you with my child. Malik stood there in silence for a long time before speaking again. So, he really is my son. Emma looked at the man standing in front of her. She could still deny it, but the look in his eyes had changed. There was no longer only suspicion. There was anger, pain, and hope. Yes. That single word changed his expression. Malik turned away and ran a hand across his face. You told me he was gone. I know. For almost 5 years, I believed my child was dead. Emma didn't defend herself. You spent 5 years grieving for a child who was alive. I'm sorry. Malik turned back. Sorry? His voice rose. Do you think saying you're sorry is enough? Emma lowered her eyes. No. Does he know who I am? No. Has he ever asked about me? Emma stayed silent. Malik already had his answer. What did you tell him? I told him his father lives somewhere else. Malik let out a bitter laugh. Somewhere else. I was living less than a day's drive away. You spent most of those years overseas. But I wasn't dead. He looked at her. You never told him I died. No, you erased me from his life. Emma met his eyes without looking away. I protected him from your family, and from you. At the time, I didn't know if there was any difference. Malik stood there without saying a word. After a long silence, he finally asked, Can I see him? Emma looked at him. Not yet. You don't have the right to stop me. You only found out he exists yesterday. I've spent almost 5 years protecting his life. Malik took a slow breath. I'm his father. Being his biological father doesn't mean he'll trust you the moment you appear. Malik clenched his jaw. Then what do you want? I need time to tell him the truth. After that, if Zach is willing, you can meet him. I'll be there. Malik stared at her. I have to ask your permission to see my own son? You have to respect the life he's been living for the past 5 years. He has no idea who you are. And who respected my rights? Emma answered without raising her voice. I was wrong to hide the truth from you. But my mistake doesn't give you the right to rush into his life before he's ready. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Malik looked up at the apartment building before turning back to Emma. You'll meet my son. Emma held his gaze. When he's ready. I won't wait forever. Emma nodded. If you can't be patient with him, then you're not ready to be the father he needs. 3 days later, Emma told Zach the truth. She didn't wait for a special occasion. It happened after dinner while the two of them were sitting on the living room floor putting together a jigsaw puzzle. Zach was searching for a piece with part of the roof when Emma called his name. Zach? Yes, Mom? He looked up. Do you remember the man you met at my station? Zach put the puzzle piece down. The one who kept looking at me? Yes. He looked at her quietly. Is he my dad? Emma nodded. Zach didn't say anything. He picked up the puzzle piece, looked at it, then set it back down. Why doesn't Dad live with us? Because your dad and I couldn't stay together. Did he know about me? Emma felt her throat tighten. He didn't know before. Why not? Because I didn't tell him. Zach looked at her for a long time. Did you forget? No. Emma shook her head. I was afraid. Were you afraid of Dad? I was afraid of a lot of things. And because of that, I did something that wasn't right. I didn't tell your dad that you existed. Zach thought for a moment. Is Dad mad at you? Yes. Is he mad at me? No. Emma reached over and held his hand. None of this is your fault. Does Dad want to see me? He does. Zach pulled his knees up and wrapped his arms around them. I don't know him. That's why I'm not going to force you to do anything. He can meet you only if you want to. I'll stay with you the whole time. Zach leaned his head against her shoulder. Is Dad fierce? Emma smiled a little. Sometimes he has a temper. Does he hit kids? No. Does he know how to build puzzles? Emma paused. I don't know. Zach looked at the unfinished puzzle in front of him, then let Dad come over and give it a try. The first meeting took place at a cafe beside an indoor children's play area. Malik arrived more than 30 minutes early. He chose a table near the entrance. 3 large gift bags sat in front of him. The moment he saw Emma walking in with Zach, he stood up. Zach stopped behind his mother. Malik looked at his son. The tension showed clearly on the face of a man who could speak in front of hundreds of business partners without preparation, but now had no idea how to begin. Hi. Zach looked up at Emma. She gave him a small nod. Hello. Hearing those 2 simple words instead of Dad brought a brief shadow to Malik's eyes, but he didn't show it. I bought you a few presents. He pulled the 3 gift bags closer. Inside were a remote control car, a robot that stood nearly half as tall as Zach, and a puzzle meant for children older than him. Zach looked at the toys without touching them. Malik asked, Don't you like them? Mom says I shouldn't accept lots of presents from strangers. I'm not a stranger. Emma looked at Malik at once. He corrected himself. I mean, you'll get to know me better. Zach stayed close to his mother. I like trains more than cars. Malik turned toward Emma. She said nothing. He realized he had never asked. The words left him without a reply. A little later, Malik sat down on the playroom floor with Zach. He tried to put the puzzle together but kept picking the wrong pieces. Zach watched for a while before reaching over. That's not how it goes. Malik smiled. Then how does it go? You have to look at the picture. I am looking. You're looking, but you don't understand it. Emma was sitting at a nearby table. She turned her face away to hide her smile. Malik didn't get upset. He handed the puzzle box to Zach. Then teach me. For the next hour, Zach showed Malik each piece one by one. Together, they finished a small, slightly crooked house. When they were done, Malik asked, Next time, how about I take you shopping for some trains? Zach looked at Emma right away. Emma smiled. We'll talk about next time when next time comes. Malik wasn't happy with the answer, but this time he didn't argue in front of Zach. When it was time to leave, Zach didn't take the expensive gifts. He picked only a small wooden train that had been included as decoration inside the puzzle box. Malik watched him walk away, holding the least expensive item he had bought. He couldn't understand it. Once they reached the car, Emma spoke. You don't have to buy so many things. Malik looked at the little boy climbing into Winter's car. I missed almost 5 years of his life. You can't make up for 5 years with 3 bags of toys. Malik stayed quiet for a moment. I just didn't know what he liked. Then ask. He watched Zach fastening his seatbelt. He still calls me Mister. Emma looked at him. Did you expect a child who only learned you existed yesterday to start calling you Dad? Malik didn't answer. Emma opened the car door. Behind her, Malik called her name. Emma. She turned around. Thank you for bringing him here. It was the first sentence he had spoken to her since they met again that didn't contain blame or resentment. After that, they met once a week. The second time, Malik didn't bring any gifts. He took Zach to a park, but the moment they arrived, he wanted to rent an electric cart and drive around. Zach only wanted to sit by the lake and watch people fishing. After 10 minutes, Malik grew restless. Don't you want to play anything? I am playing. Watching fish swim is playing? Yes, Zach answered seriously. They're swimming. Emma laughed from the bench behind them. Malik looked back at her. What's so funny? I'm watching you learn how to sit still. The third time, they went to a railroad museum with model trains. Malik had prepared in advance. He had learned the names of different locomotives, checked the demonstration schedule, and bought tickets for the quietest time of the day. Zach became so excited that he forgot to stay close to his mother. He grabbed Malik's hand and pulled him from one display to another. Dad, look! Malik looked at him in surprise. I'm looking. Where does this train go? It goes through the mountains. What's on the other side of the mountains? Malik thought for a few seconds. Another city. Zach shook his head. You don't know, do you? Malik smiled. No, I don't. If you don't know, you should say you don't know. Mom says you shouldn't make things up. Malik glanced at Emma. You've taught him a lot. Emma smiled. Just the basics. By the end of the visit, Zach had fallen asleep in the back seat. Malik stood beside the car while Emma leaned in to fasten Zach's seatbelt. I can carry him upstairs. It's okay. He's getting heavy, but I can manage. Malik looked at her. Do you always have to turn me down? Emma straightened up. I just don't want to change his routine too quickly. I'm only carrying him upstairs. I'm not taking him anywhere. Emma stayed silent for a few seconds before stepping aside. Malik bent down and lifted Zach into his arms. Still asleep, the little boy wrapped his arms around Malik's neck by instinct and rested his head on his shoulder. Malik froze. He stood beside the car without moving, as though even breathing might wake his son. Emma saw the emotion in his eyes. For the first time, something inside her softened. Not because of the feelings she once had for him, but because she realized Malik truly loved their son. Loving him, however, wasn't the same as knowing how to be a father. Teresa found out about Zach after the fourth visit. Malik came home late that evening with an unfinished model train in his hand. He set it on his desk before heading upstairs to take a shower. While he was gone, Teresa walked into the study. She noticed the instruction sheet lying beside the model. Across the page were messy green crayon marks. At the bottom was a line of uneven handwriting from a child. Dad, you finish the rest. Teresa held the paper for a long time. When Malik came back downstairs, she was still standing there. Whose child is this? Malik looked at the note in her hand. My son. Teresa didn't look surprised. She slowly placed the paper back on the desk. Emma's? Yes. How long have you known? A little over a month. Teresa looked at him. And you're only telling me now? Malik answered calmly. This is between Emma and me. Teresa let out a quiet laugh. You're my husband, and you suddenly have a 5-year-old son. You think that has nothing to do with me? Malik didn't respond. Teresa continued. The child was born before our marriage, but the moment you walked back into Emma's life, you stepped back into it while you were still married to me. Malik turned away. I'm only seeing my son. Teresa looked at him. Can you really stand there and tell me it's only about your son? Malik didn't answer. His silence told her more than any confession could have. Their marriage had never been like other marriages. After Emma disappeared from Malik's life, Teresa stayed beside him when he was at his lowest. She knew he didn't love her, but she believed time, patience, and a wedding would eventually help him move on. She had been wrong. Over the years, Malik rarely mentioned Emma, but he had never truly moved toward Teresa either. They lived in the same house. They attended the same family events. But every night after the bedroom door closed, a distance remained between them that neither of them spoke about. Teresa had always told herself that at least she was still his legal wife. At least the Miller family accepted her as their daughter-in-law. Now Emma had returned, and she hadn't come back alone. She had brought a son with her. Do your parents know? Teresa asked. Not yet. Are you planning to keep it from them? For now, Teresa looked at him. Because you're afraid they'll try to take the child? Or because you're afraid Emma won't let you see him anymore? Malik frowned. Stay out of this. Teresa met his eyes. I don't want to get involved. But you've already brought it into our marriage. Malik looked away. There wasn't much of a marriage to begin with. The words landed harder than he intended. He realized it, but he didn't apologize. Teresa stood there without moving. After a while, she gave a small nod. You're right. There never was. She walked out of the room. That night, Teresa called Bella. When Bella answered, Teresa almost told her everything. Instead, she stopped herself. Is something wrong? Bella asked. Teresa looked toward the closed door of Malik's study. No. I was just wondering if you're coming by tomorrow. She still didn't know which choice would benefit her more. Keeping the secret might earn Malik's gratitude. Telling Bella and David about Zach might secure her place in the family instead. A grandson was the one thing they had wanted for years. If she was the one who helped bring Zach back to the Miller family, they wouldn't make it easy for Malik to leave her. Teresa simply hadn't decided which path served her best. After nearly 2 months, Zach had grown used to having Malik around. He no longer called him Mr. in every sentence. Sometimes, when he became excited or needed help with something, the word Dad slipped out before he even realized it. The first time it happened was at the playground. Zach climbed halfway up a rope ladder, then froze. He was too scared to keep climbing, but didn't dare climb back down either. Emma stood below him. Put your right foot on the lower rope. Zach clung tightly to the ropes. I can't see it. Malik stepped forward. Dad's right here. Just come down. The words came out so naturally that none of the three of them noticed at first. Zach looked down. Dad, catch me. Malik stood there for a second without moving. I will. Zach climbed down and dropped into his father's arms. Malik held him a little longer than necessary. Zach pulled back. I'm down now. Malik set him on the ground, but his eyes had already turned red. Emma looked away. That night, Malik sent her a message. I'd like to take Zach out by myself for one day. Emma read it but didn't reply. Over the past several weeks, Malik had tried hard. He no longer overwhelmed Zach with gifts. He never asked Zach to call him Dad. He didn't take Zach anywhere they hadn't already agreed on. Even so, trusting him was different from letting him spend a whole day alone with their son. The next day, Malik sent another message. I want to take him to the new railroad museum. You can choose the time, the route, and call us whenever you want. Emma still didn't agree. At the end of the week, Malik brought it up again while the three of them were having lunch together. I want one day alone with my son. Emma put down her spoon. We've already talked about this. No, you just stayed silent. Silence is still an answer. Malik looked toward Zach, who was eating at a nearby table. I've been seeing him for almost 2 months, and you still sit a few feet away every time. Because Zach still needs me there. Malik turned back to her. Or because you still don't trust me? Emma didn't answer. What do I have to do before you trust me? I don't know. Malik lowered his voice. You can't keep punishing me forever because of what happened years ago, Emma answered just as quietly. Not in front of Zach. Malik glanced toward his son again. I only want to spend one day with him. Emma looked at him. I need time to think about it. Malik didn't push any further. Malik didn't bring it up again. That evening, Winter came over. After listening to Emma explain what had happened, she said, You can't sit beside the two of them forever. Emma looked at her. I wasn't planning to. Then, give him a chance. Emma lowered her eyes. Have you forgotten what his family said to me? No, I haven't forgotten. Winter paused before continuing. But since he came back, has he crossed any boundaries? No. Does Zach like spending time with him? Emma nodded. He does. Then you have to separate your fears from what Zach needs. Emma stayed quiet. What if he takes Zach and doesn't bring him back? Winter answered calmly. You've saved every message. You know where he lives. You know his schedule. He can't disappear with Zach. Emma looked at her mother. His family has enough money to do things other people can't. They have money, Winter said, but that doesn't mean they can do whatever they want. She rested a hand on Emma's shoulder. More importantly, You can't tell him you're giving him a chance to be a father while keeping every door closed. That's not giving him a chance. Emma understood exactly what her mother meant. Understanding it didn't make her any less afraid. That night, she went into Zach's bedroom. He was still awake, lining up his toy train cars across the blanket. Emma sat beside him. Your dad wants to spend a day with you. Would you like that? Zach looked up. You're not coming? Not this time. He hesitated. Will Dad bring me home? The question tightened Emma's chest. Yes, he promised he would. Zach picked up one of the train cars. Then I'll go. Emma smiled gently. You're not scared? Zach shook his head. I'll have my watch. I can call you. Emma had bought him the children's smartwatch when he started school. It had calling and location tracking. She nodded. Okay, but you have to remember something. Don't go anywhere except the places your dad and I agreed on. If anything makes you uncomfortable, call me right away. I will. Don't eat anything you don't recognize. Okay, and no cold milk. Zach looked at her and laughed. Mom, I'm almost 5. Emma pulled him into a hug. No matter how old you are, you'll always be my little boy. On Saturday morning, Malik arrived to pick up Zach at 8 o'clock. He was dressed casually. There was no driver, and he had left his usual luxury car at home. Emma checked the child safety seat in the back, then looked through Zach's backpack one last time. Water bottle, allergy medicine, jacket, everything was in place. Malik stood beside her. You've checked it 3 times already. Emma ignored the comment. The blue medicine is for a mild allergic reaction. The white one should only be used if a doctor says so. There's a list of foods he's allergic to in the front pocket. I read it. Malik nodded. No nuts, no cold drinks. If he gets sleepy, I'll let him nap in the car instead of carrying him around. Emma looked at him. Bring him home by 7. I will. Before 7. I know. And don't take him to your parents' house. Malik paused for the slightest moment. I promised. They can't know where Zach is. I understand. Go. Emma crouched down and adjusted the straps on Zach's backpack. Call me if anything happens. Zach wrapped his arms around her neck. I'll be home this evening. Emma kissed his forehead. Have fun. Malik opened the car door for him. Before getting into the driver's seat, he turned back. Thank you. Emma didn't answer. She stood in front of the apartment building and watched the car until it disappeared around the corner. The morning went exactly as planned. Malik took Zach to a railroad model exhibition. Every hour, he sent Emma a photo even though she had never asked him to. In the first picture, Zach stood beside a bright red locomotive with a huge smile across his face. In the second, he was eating lunch. Every item on his tray was something Emma had approved. Around 1 o'clock, Zach called her through his smartwatch. Mom, I'm driving a train. Emma laughed. A real train? A pretend one. Zach giggled. Dad said if I drove a real train, I'd get arrested. Malik's voice came from behind him. That's not what I said. I said you have to grow up before you're allowed to drive one. Zach lifted his wrist toward his face. Dad's changing his story. Emma could hear the two of them arguing in the background. A smile spread across her face before she realized it. Have fun, okay? I'll make fish soup for dinner tonight. Can Dad come eat too? Emma didn't answer right away. The silence carried through the call. Malik had probably heard the question because everything behind Zach suddenly went quiet. A moment later, Emma said, Dad's taking you home first. Then he'll go back to his own house. Zach sounded disappointed. Okay. The call ended. Emma stared at the watch's location on her phone for a long time. Part of her felt relieved seeing how happy Zach was. Another part wondered if she had just opened a door she would never be able to close. That afternoon, Malik took Zach to a park along the river. Zach chased pigeons until they had eaten every crumb of bread Emma had packed for him. Later, he sat on a bench and told his father stories about school. Malik listened as Zach talked about each of his classmates, who borrowed the wrong pencil, who fell asleep during story time, and all the little things that seemed unimportant to everyone else. To Malik, every story filled in another missing piece of the 5 years he had lost. Who do you like most in your class? Ben. Is Ben a good kid? Yeah. Zach nodded seriously. But he picks his nose a lot. Malik laughed. You still like him? Mom says everybody has something they're not good at. Malik smiled. Your mom says a lot of smart things. Zach looked at him. Mom's always right. Not always. Zach shook his head. She is. Malik watched him for a moment. What if your mom makes a mistake? Zach answered without thinking. She'll say she's sorry. Malik didn't ask another question. A little before 5 o'clock, Malik's phone rang. The caller had showed Bella. He looked at the screen and declined the call. A few seconds later, it rang again. This time, it was David. Malik stood up and walked several steps away before answering. "Dad." David's voice came through the speaker at once. "Where are you?" "I have something to do." What could possibly be more important than coming home all day? Malik didn't answer. David continued. "Does it have something to do with that child?" Malik turned to look at Zach, who was still sitting on the bench, absent-mindedly nudging pebbles with the toe of his shoe. "What did you say? Bring your son home?" Malik's expression hardened. "Who told you?" "That doesn't matter." Malik thought of Teresa immediately. She had denied saying anything, but someone in the family had obviously found out. "I'm not bringing him there. He's a Miller." David's voice became firmer. "He's your son. He's Emma's son, too. That's exactly why you should bring him here." Malik looked toward Zach again. "I promised Emma I'd have him home before 7. David gave a cold laugh. "That woman hid your son from you for almost 5 years, and you're still doing what she tells you?" Malik tightened his grip on the phone. "What happens between Emma and me is for us to settle. You think she'll let you have him?" David didn't wait for an answer. "Today she agreed to let you see him. Tomorrow she could disappear with him." "Emma wouldn't do that." David's voice grew sharper. 5 years ago she told you your son was dead. What exactly do you still believe?" Malik closed his eyes for a moment. David continued. "Bring him here. Just for one night. Your mother and I want to meet our grandson." Malik remained silent. "Are you really going to let your only son grow up with his mother's last name, living in a rented apartment, as if he doesn't have a father?" Malik answered quietly. "How he lives isn't your decision." "Then it's hers?" David shot back. "Do you know what she's told him all these years? Do you know who he calls dad? What if another man walks into their lives before you realize you've already lost your place?" Those words struck the fear Malik had been trying not to face. Every time Zach was scared, he reached for Emma. Every time he had a question, he looked at his mother first. Even after calling Malik dad, the person Zach trusted most was still Emma. Malik knew that was only natural. For nearly 5 years, she had been Zach's whole world. Even so, it hurt. He was Zach's father. Yet in his son's life, he was still a newcomer who had to ask permission for everything. David spoke again. "Bring my grandson home. If you won't, I'll send someone to bring him here." Malik's voice turned cold. "Don't involve my son." "Then bring him yourself." The call ended. Malik stood by the river, staring at the dark screen of his phone. When he turned around, Zach was watching him. "Was that Grandpa?" Malik looked surprised. "How did you know?" "You said Dad on the phone." Malik sat back down beside him. "Yes." Zach looked at the river. "Does Grandpa know about me now?" "He does." "Does he want to meet me?" "Yes." Zach thought for a moment. "Then why won't Mom let me?" Malik searched for the right words. "Your mom is still worried." "Is she scared of Grandpa?" Malik didn't know how to answer. David was strict, controlling, and always believed he was right. But when it came to his only grandson, Malik wanted to believe he wouldn't do anything to frighten a child. "Grandpa just wants to see you for a little while." Zach lowered his head. "Mom said we can't go anywhere else today." Those simple words brought Malik back to the promise he had made that morning. No visit to the mansion. No meeting with his parents. Bring Zach home before 7. He had agreed to every one of those conditions. He had accused Emma of taking away his chance to be a father. If he broke their agreement the very first time she trusted him alone with Zach, she would never trust him again. Malik unlocked his phone, ready to call his father back and refuse. At that moment, a message from Teresa appeared on the screen. "Dad is furious. He said if you don't bring Zach home, he'll send someone to find him." Malik stared at the words. He knew his father was capable of doing exactly that. If he took Zach to the mansion for a short visit, then brought him home before 7, maybe nothing would get out of control. Just once. Just long enough for his parents to see their grandson. Malik looked at Zach. "How about we stop by and see your grandparents for a little while?" Zach shook his head right away. "Mom said I'm not allowed. Dad will explain it to your mom. Call Mom first." Malik glanced at the time. It was 5:20. He already knew Emma would refuse if he called. "We'll only stay a little while, then Dad will take you home." Zach still shook his head. "I want to go home to Mom." Malik felt his chest tighten. "You don't want to meet Grandpa and Grandma?" Another day, when Mom comes too. It was a perfectly reasonable answer, but David's words kept echoing in Malik's mind. Does she get to decide everything? For almost 5 years, he had been shut out of his son's life. Now, even taking Zach to meet his own grandparents depended on Emma's permission. Dad will stay with you. His voice became firmer. Mom said you're my dad too. Zach fell silent. Malik realized he had frightened him and softened his tone. Just for a little while. If you don't like it, we'll leave right away. Zach looked at him for several seconds before giving a reluctant nod. At the Miller family mansion, Bella was already waiting outside before the car came to a complete stop. The moment Zach stepped out, she covered her mouth. The little boy looked so much like Malik as a child that she didn't need a DNA test to know he was her grandson. She hurried over. You're Zach, aren't you? Zach hid behind Malik. Yes, ma'am. David stood at the top of the front steps. He tried to keep his usual stern expression, but his eyes never left the little boy. Come here, son. Zach didn't move. Malik crouched beside him. These are your grandparents, Zach answered in a tiny voice. Hello? Bella bent down to hug him. Zach immediately stepped backward. Her hands froze in the air. Malik smiled apologetically. He just needs a little time. Bella nodded. That's all right. Come inside. Grandma has lots of toys. Zach held tightly to Malik's hand. I'm only staying for a little while. Bella turned to her son. Ram. Who told him that? Mom did. The smile on Bella's face faded. Malik said quietly, I promised Emma I'd have him home before 7. David turned and walked inside. Come in. The dining table had already been filled with snacks. Cakes, milk, fruit, and several bowls of roasted nuts covered the table. Teresa stood near the staircase, watching Zach in silence. The little boy looked so much like Malik, yet there were unmistakable traces of Emma in his face. It felt as though Emma herself had walked back into the house. Malik looked at Teresa. Did you tell my parents? No. Then how did they find out? Teresa met his eyes. Maybe you should ask whoever's been following you instead of asking me. Bella stepped in at once. This isn't the time to argue. She pulled out a chair for Zach. Come sit down, tell Grandma what you'd like to eat. Zach looked across the table. I can't eat nuts, Bella smiled. They're good for you. They'll help you grow strong. Mom told me not to eat them. Your mom worries too much. Malik interrupted immediately. He's allergic. Bella paused. Allergic? No one in our family has allergies. Emma wrote everything down. Malik reached for Zach's backpack to check the list. Just then, his phone vibrated. Emma was calling. Malik looked at the screen for a moment before answering. David glanced at him. Emma? Yes. Tell her Zach is here. Malik looked at his father. Please stay out of this. He walked into the hallway before picking up the call. Emma's voice came through at once. Where are you and Zach? Malik looked through the glass door. Zach was sitting on the chair with his feet dangling above the floor, his eyes fixed on him. Emma spoke again. I checked Zach's location. He's at your parents' house. Malik didn't answer. He had forgotten that the smartwatch on Zach's wrist constantly shared his location with Emma. Malik. He finally spoke. I brought him here so my parents could see him for a little while. Silence filled the line. It unsettled him more than if she had shouted. When Emma spoke again, her voice was calm. What did you promise me this morning? Malik closed his eyes briefly. I know what I promised. Then bring my son home. My parents only want to meet their grandson. We can talk about this later. No. This is something we were supposed to agree on before it happened. Malik tightened his grip on the phone. You never would have agreed. And you just proved why I couldn't. He took a slow breath. You kept me away from my son for almost 5 years. Now I can't even bring him to meet my own family? Emma answered without raising her voice. You're putting two different things together to excuse breaking your promise. He's my son. Being his father doesn't mean you get to ignore every agreement we made. Frustration flared inside him. So what do you want? Am I supposed to spend the rest of my life seeing my own son only when you're sitting a few feet away? If you keep making decisions like this, then yes. Something inside Malik snapped. He's staying here tonight. Emma didn't respond. He could hear her breathing on the other end of the call. Say that again. He's staying here tonight. You're keeping him against our agreement? Just one night. I'll bring him home tomorrow. It was only a little after 6. Malik looked through the doorway. Zach had already climbed down from his chair and was watching him. He had probably heard Emma's voice through the phone. Mom! Zach called out. Emma spoke immediately. Where's Zach? Malik turned back toward the living room. He's inside. I'll give him the phone. He took a step forward, but David moved in front of him. Don't let her upset the boy. Dad, move. You've already brought him here. Stop wavering now. Zach ran over. I want to talk to Mom. Malik crouched down just as one of the housekeepers carried in a huge toy box. Zach looked toward it for only a second. David leaned closer to his son and spoke quietly. If you take him home now, she'll never let you see him again. Malik knew his father might be right. Emma would have every reason not to trust him after today. He had already broken the most important promise he made. If he took Zach home now, he might still be able to repair some of the damage, but his pride wouldn't let him admit he had made a mistake so quickly. He lifted the phone again. I'll bring him home tomorrow. Emma's voice turned sharp. Malik, listen carefully. I let you spend time with Zach because I believed you wanted to learn how to be his father. Not because I was giving you a chance to get even with me. I'm not getting even with anyone. Then bring my son home. I'm only asking for one night. You didn't ask. You decided. Zach began to cry. Mom, I want to go home. Malik froze with the phone still in his hand. Emma called out loudly. Zach! David reached over and took the phone away from his son. That's enough. The call ended. Malik turned toward his father. What did you do? David met his eyes. She was upsetting the boy. We're the ones upsetting him. David didn't back down. If you want your son back, you have to stop hesitating. If you give in now, you'll lose him again. Malik couldn't answer. Then why did you bring him here? The question left him speechless. He had told himself he only wanted his parents to meet Zach. Then he convinced himself it would only be for one night. But the truth was harder to face. Part of him wanted Emma to know what it felt like to have someone else make decisions about your child. He wanted her to wait helplessly, just as he had spent almost 5 years believing his son was gone. He never meant to hurt Zach. It wasn't until he saw the little boy crying for his mother that he realized the one suffering most wasn't Emma. It was their son. I want to go home, Zach cried. Malik walked over and knelt in front of him. You'll stay here tonight. Dad will be with you. Zach shook his head over and over. I don't want to sleep here. I want Mom. Bella stepped closer. Grandma has a beautiful room for you. There are lots of toys upstairs. I don't want toys. Zach hugged his backpack tighter. I want to go home. David frowned. You're a big boy. One night without your mother isn't something to cry about. Zach shrank back in fear. Teresa had been watching from the staircase the whole time. She stepped downstairs. Let me take him upstairs for a while. Malik looked at her. That's not necessary. Are you going to leave him standing here like this? Teresa crouched until she was at Zach's eye level. Would you like to come upstairs with me? You don't have to talk to anyone. Zach looked at Malik, then whispered, I'm waiting for Mom. Teresa noticed the smartwatch on his wrist. Can you call your mom with that? Zach lifted his arm. The screen was on, but the call wouldn't go through because the signal inside the house was weak. Teresa looked at Malik. At least let him hear his mother's voice. What are you trying to do? I'm not taking your son away. Malik didn't respond. Teresa searched through the watch until she found a saved recording. Did your mom record bedtime stories for you? Zach nodded. She did. Teresa pressed play. Emma's voice filled the room. Once upon a time, there was a little train that believed it had to travel farther than every other train before it could become strong. Zach grew quiet almost immediately. Still clutching his backpack, he followed Teresa upstairs. The guest room was spacious, with a brand new bed, fresh blankets, and a giant teddy bear waiting in the corner. Zach ignored all of it. He sat on the edge of the bed and listened to his mother's voice until the recording ended. Teresa sat quietly near the door, watching him. Memories she hadn't thought about in years came back. When she was 5, her parents had left her with her grandmother while they moved overseas for work. They promised they would return in a year. 1 year became 3. 3 became 5. Every phone call ended with the same promise. They would come home soon. Night after night, she hugged one of her mother's old sweaters and listened to cassette tapes her mother had mailed from overseas. She had always believed that if she grew up with enough money and built a family of her own, she would never feel abandoned again. Yet the little boy sitting in front of her looked just as frightened as she had been back then. Zach opened his eyes a few minutes later. He looked around the unfamiliar room before turning to Teresa. Is Mom coming? Teresa couldn't answer right away. Your mom. She stopped. Zach looked at the closed bedroom door. Mom always comes when I'm scared. Teresa forced a small smile. Your dad is downstairs. Zach lowered his head. I want Mom. Downstairs. Malik was still arguing with David. Bella tried to calm both of them, but neither was listening anymore. The doorbell suddenly rang. Once, then again. Before anyone could react, it rang a third time, longer than before. Every person in the living room turned toward the front door. One of the housekeepers hurried over and looked at the security monitor beside the entrance. She hesitated before speaking. "Miss Miller." Bella frowned. "Who is it?" "It's Miss Emma." The room fell silent. Malik looked toward the front door at once. David's expression darkened. "Don't open it, Dad. She has no right to come here making demands." The doorbell rang again. "Dad." This time it didn't stop after one press. Emma kept her finger on the button. Upstairs, Zach heard the sound. He climbed off the bed and ran to the window. Teresa followed him. Down below, outside the front gate, Emma stood with one hand gripping the bars while the other rested on the intercom. Her face looked calm, but Teresa could see the fear she was trying to hold back. Zach pressed both hands against the glass. "Mom!" He couldn't be heard from outside, but he kept calling anyway. Teresa looked from the little boy to the woman waiting beyond the gate. She finally understood that Emma hadn't come there to fight with anyone. She had only come to bring her son home. The doorbell kept ringing. Malik walked toward the front door, but David stepped in front of him. "No one opens that gate. Dad, this has gone far enough. If you let her walk in here today, she'll think she can control this family forever." Malik looked at his father. "She's not trying to control anyone. She came for her son." David's voice turned cold. "He's a Miller. He's also Emma's son." Bella grabbed David's arm. "Enough. The child's already terrified." David pulled his arm away. "I'm thinking about this family's future." Another long ring echoed through the house. Upstairs, Zach kept pounding on the bedroom window. "Mom! Mom!" Teresa couldn't watch any longer. She took Zach's hand. "Come with me." "Where?" "To your mom." She led him downstairs before anyone could stop them. Bella looked up in surprise. "What are you doing?" Teresa answered calmly. "Ending this before it gets worse." David raised his voice. "Take the boy back upstairs." Teresa didn't move. "He's frightened." "He's staying here tonight." Malik looked at his father. "No, he's going home." David stared at him. "You're choosing that woman over your own family?" "I'm choosing my son." Without waiting for another argument, Malik walked to the front door and unlocked it. A moment later, the front gate opened. Emma hurried inside. The instant Zach saw her, he broke free from Teresa's hand and ran across the yard. "Mom!" Emma dropped to her knees and caught him in her arms. Zach buried his face against her shoulder and cried so hard he could barely breathe. Emma wrapped both arms around him. "Mom's here. It's okay. Mom's here." She kissed his hair again and again while gently rubbing his back. Malik stood several feet away, watching them. Only then did he understand how badly he had broken Emma's trust. He had wanted one night with his son. Instead, he had turned Zach's happiest day with him into a memory filled with fear. Emma finally looked up. Her eyes met Malik's for only a moment. "I'm taking Zach home." Malik gave a slow nod. "I'm sorry." Emma didn't answer. She picked Zach up and walked toward the gate. As she passed Malik, Zach lifted his tear-stained face. "Dad." Malik looked at him. "I'm sorry too." Malik couldn't find any words. He simply rested one hand on Zach's hair for a brief moment before letting them go. He remained standing in the driveway, watching until Emma's car disappeared into the night. It was almost 10 o'clock that night, and the gates of the Miller mansion were still closed. Emma had already called for help, but while she waited, the Miller family insisted that Zach was with his biological father and was completely safe. The security guard refused to let her inside. Bella never came out to see her. Emma stood outside the gate with her phone clenched tightly in one hand. "Zach!" she called again. There was no answer. Inside the living room, Malik could hear her voice carrying through the gate. More than once, he started toward the front door, only to stop. David looked at him. "If you open that gate now, don't expect to see your son again after today." "Dad, I know exactly what kind of woman Emma is. She hid your son for almost 5 years. She only let you meet him because she couldn't hide him anymore. She never wanted you to be his father." Malik looked at his father. "I already broke my promise to her. One promise isn't more important than the fact that she lied to you about your own child." Malik glanced upstairs. "Zach doesn't want to stay here. Children get used to things. How long are you planning to keep him?" David didn't answer immediately. First, we need to put everything back where it belongs. He should carry the Miller name. He should grow up with the life he deserves. Malik gave a bitter laugh. You're talking about him like he's property. He's part of this family. For almost 5 years, none of us even knew he existed. Now you've seen him once, and suddenly he's family? Bella finally spoke. Are you angry with us, or are you angry with yourself? Malik fell silent. Bella walked over. I warned Emma to stay away from you, but I never imagined she'd actually give birth to the baby. If I'd known, I never would have let my grandson grow up somewhere else all these years. Malik turned toward her. So you admit you threatened her? Bella hesitated. I was trying to protect you. You told her you'd take the baby away. I never used those exact words, but that's what you meant. Bella didn't deny it. A Miller child belongs with the Miller family. What's wrong with that? Malik looked at his mother. Nearly 5 years earlier, he hadn't believed Emma when she said she was afraid of his family. Now he understood that her fear hadn't come from imagination. It had been real. And instead of taking Zach home, he was helping his parents turn that fear into reality. He turned toward the front door. At that moment, something crashed upstairs. A second later, Teresa shouted from the second floor, Malik! He ran upstairs. Zach was curled up on the bed with one hand clutching his stomach. A glass of milk lay shattered on the floor. Red blotches were spreading across his neck and both arms. Malik rushed to him. Zach's lips were trembling, and every breath came with obvious effort. Teresa looked at the plate on the bedside table. Did someone bring him pastries with nuts? Malik spun around. Who gave him those? One of the housekeepers standing outside the room turned pale. Miss Miller told me to bring him something to eat. I didn't know he had food allergies. Malik grabbed Zach's backpack and searched every pocket. Inside were 2 different medications. But in his panic, he couldn't remember which one Emma had said to use first. The instruction sheet Emma had packed slipped onto the floor. He picked it up, but the words blurred together in front of his eyes. Teresa looked at him. Which medicine? Malik stared at his son, struggling to breathe. For the first time since learning he had a child, he felt real fear. Not fear that Emma would take Zach away. Not fear of losing his place as a father. He was terrified that the little boy in front of him might be hurt because he had broken the promise he made that morning. Teresa ran toward the door. I'm opening the gate. Bella stepped into the hallway to stop her. What are you doing? The ambulance is on its way. Zach's mother knows exactly which medicine to use. Teresa rushed downstairs. Outside the gate, Emma was still calling her son's name. Teresa pressed the control button. The iron gate slowly swung open. Emma didn't ask a single question. One look at Teresa's face was enough. She ran inside. Where's Zach? Upstairs. He broke out in hives and he's having trouble breathing. Emma sprinted past her. More than 5 years earlier, she had walked out of this house because she was afraid of losing her child. Now she ran back into it because her child needed her. Her footsteps echoed across every stair. Upstairs, Zach was crying for his mother while Malik knelt beside the bed with 2 bottles of medicine in his hands, unable to decide how to save his own son. Emma reached the second floor without slowing down. She didn't look at anyone standing in the hallway. The bedroom door was wide open. Zach was curled up on the bed with one hand pressed against his throat. His breathing was fast and labored. Red patches had spread from his neck across his chest. Malik was kneeling beside him, his face completely drained of color, still holding the 2 bottles of medicine. The moment Zach saw his mother, he burst into tears. Mom! Emma rushed to the bed. Mom's here! Look at me! She gently lifted his chin. What did you eat? Zach struggled to answer. Cake! Teresa spoke immediately from behind her. It had nuts! He only ate 1 bite. Emma picked up the instruction sheet from the floor and snatched the blue bottle from Malik's hand. Can you still swallow? Zach gave a weak nod. She gave him the medicine, then loosened the collar of his shirt and helped him sit upright so he could breathe more easily. Look at Mom. Don't lie down. Zach grabbed her hand tightly. Don't leave. Emma brushed the hair away from his forehead. I'm not going anywhere. She turned to Malik. Where's the ambulance? He looked at her blankly. Malik! Her voice snapped him back to reality. Call them again. Tell them it's a 4-year-old child with a severe food allergy. He's having trouble breathing and he's covered in hives. Malik immediately dialed the emergency dispatcher and repeated every word she said. Bella stood outside the room, her face pale. How is he? No one answered her. Zach started coughing harder. Emma pulled him against her, keeping his upper body upright. Slow breaths. Stay with Mom. Her voice remained steady, almost cold. Only the hand supporting Zach's back betrayed her. It was shaking uncontrollably. The sound of the ambulance siren finally reached the mansion. Paramedics rushed upstairs with emergency equipment. They checked Zach, placed an oxygen mask over his face, and quickly moved him onto a stretcher. Emma stayed beside him the entire time, never letting go of his hand. Malik stepped forward. I'll carry him. Emma turned toward him at once. Don't touch him. Malik stopped where he was. I'm going with you. You told me you understood what he couldn't eat. Emma looked straight at him. I packed his medicine. I reminded you about every single thing. Malik lowered his head. I know. Emma's voice broke for the first time. No, you don't know anything. The ambulance doors closed. Emma climbed inside, still holding Zach's hand. Malik remained standing in the middle of the driveway, watching the ambulance speed through the open gates. At the hospital, Zach was taken straight into the emergency room. Emma stood outside the doors with her arms still held as though she were carrying him. A streak of spilled milk stained the front of her shirt. Her hair was a mess. The back of one hand was scraped and red from the iron gate she had tried to force open. Malik arrived a few minutes later. He walked toward her but stopped several feet away. Teresa came in behind him. David and Bella had stayed at the mansion. Even before the ambulance left, David insisted the housekeeper hadn't meant any harm, but no one had been in the mood to listen. After several minutes of silence, Malik spoke. What did the doctor say? Emma kept staring at the emergency room doors. They're treating him. Did the medicine you gave him help? Emma finally turned to look at him. If it hadn't, do you think he would have still been breathing by the time the ambulance arrived? Malik lowered his eyes. They stood there without speaking. After a while, he said quietly, I'm sorry. Emma looked at him. Sorry? For what? Malik stared at the floor. I shouldn't have taken him to my parents' house. What else? I shouldn't have kept him there. Emma took a step closer. What else? Malik couldn't answer. Emma looked straight into his eyes. You wanted me to suffer, didn't you? He slowly lifted his head. No, you wanted me to stand outside that gate the same way you believed I'd kept you outside your son's life. Malik didn't deny it. I never thought it would end like this. Emma gave a bitter smile. That's what people always say after they've already caused the damage. Malik closed his eyes for a moment. I only wanted one night with him. Zach isn't something you can keep just because you want to. I'm his father. Emma's smile disappeared. Even now, that's still the first thing you say? Malik's voice dropped. I never meant to hurt him. Emma looked at him without the slightest warmth. Being his father gave you the right to know he existed. It gave you the chance to build a relationship with him. It never gave you the right to break your promise, keep him past the time we agreed on, or make him spend the night in a place where he was terrified. Malik lowered his head. Teresa stood a short distance away, listening to every word. She had once believed Malik brought Zach to the mansion because he wanted to take his son back. Now she understood there had been something else hidden beneath it. Part of him had wanted Emma back as well. Not by earning her trust again, but by proving she could never truly move on without him. The emergency room doors opened. A doctor stepped outside. Emma hurried over. How's my son? He's through the most dangerous part. The allergic reaction was treated quickly, and his condition is stable now. We'd like to keep him overnight for observation. Emma closed her eyes for a few seconds before letting out the breath she had been holding. Can I see him? One parent can go in. Emma followed the doctor without hesitation. Malik started to move after them, but stopped at the doorway. He no longer had the right to ask. Inside the room, Zach lay in the hospital bed with an IV in his arm. The red patches across his skin had started to fade, and his breathing had settled into a steady rhythm. The moment he saw Emma, his eyes filled with tears. Mom. Emma sat beside him and gently placed a hand against his cheek. I'm here. Zach swallowed. I thought you couldn't get in. A sharp ache rose in Emma's chest. She brushed his hair back. No one's ever going to stop Mom from getting to you again. Zach turned his head toward the door. Where's Dad? Emma was quiet for a moment. He's outside. Zach looked back at her. Did you get mad at him? I did. Zach wrapped his fingers around hers. Don't stay mad at Dad for too long. Emma looked at her son. Children couldn't untangle the complicated mistakes adults made. Zach only remembered that Malik had played trains with him, caught him when he climbed down the rope ladder, and later taken him somewhere that made him scared. Love and fear had become mixed together inside his small heart. Emma stroked the back of his hand. Mom got upset because Dad made a mistake. Did Dad say sorry? Yes. Then are you still upset? Emma smiled faintly. An apology doesn't fix everything the moment it's spoken. Zach thought about it. Then how do things get better? By not making the same mistake again. He nodded slowly. If Dad brings me home on time next time, will you forgive him? Emma didn't answer right away. I'll learn to trust him again one step at a time. Zach's face brightened a little. Like putting together a puzzle? Emma smiled. Exactly. If you put a piece in the wrong place, you can take it out and try again. But if you snap one of the pieces, it will never fit exactly the way it did before. Zach didn't fully understand. He simply squeezed her hand a little tighter before drifting back to sleep. Malik stayed outside the room the entire night. Teresa sat across the hallway from him. Neither of them spoke until dawn was close. The pale hospital lights revealed the exhaustion that her makeup usually covered. Teresa finally broke the silence. What are you going to do now? Malik kept his eyes on the floor. I don't know. Are you going to fight for custody? He looked up. I have a right to know him. Teresa met his eyes. That's not what I asked. Do you want to be with your son, or do you want to keep him? Malik frowned. Isn't that the same thing? No. Teresa glanced toward Zach's room. Last night he was in your house. You were beside him. Your parents were beside him. But he cried until he lost his voice because his mother wasn't there. Malik looked at her. Are you taking Emma's side? Teresa shook her head. I'm telling you what I saw. What do you want? What? She let out a tired laugh. Do you really think I always want something? Malik stayed silent. Teresa lowered her eyes to the wedding ring on her finger and slowly turned it. Maybe I used to. She looked up again. I thought if I married you, I'd have everything Emma walked away from. Malik asked quietly. Didn't you? Teresa smiled bitterly. What did I actually get? A big house? My name in your family records? A husband who spent every day thinking about another woman? Malik didn't answer. You never loved me. You knew that from the beginning. I did. She looked toward Zach's room. Knowing something doesn't make living with it any easier. After a long pause, she spoke again. When Zach cried for his mom tonight, I remembered my own childhood. Malik turned toward her. Teresa had never shared much about her family. He only knew her parents had gone bankrupt and left the country, leaving her to be raised by relatives. My parents said they'd be gone for 1 year. Then it became 3. Then 5. She smiled faintly. They sent money. I had nice clothes. I went to a good school. But every night I slept holding one of my mother's old sweaters. She looked at Malik. A child doesn't care how big the bedroom is. They only care whether the person they need is beside them. Malik slowly clasped his hands together. I wasn't planning to keep him forever. Teresa held his gaze. But your father was. Malik didn't say a word. Teresa already knew he understood. The next morning, Zach was moved to a regular observation room. Bella came to the hospital carrying homemade food. She stopped outside the room, but Emma didn't let her in. I only want to see my grandson for a minute. Emma glanced through the small window in the door. He's asleep. Bella lowered her voice. I know what happened yesterday was the housekeeper's fault. Emma looked at her. The housekeeper didn't know my son had food allergies. But the person who took him into that house after breaking a promise was your son. Bella pressed her lips together. Malik is his father. He had only known Zach was his son for about 2 months. Bella sighed. You can't stop him from knowing his grandparents. I'm not trying to stop anyone. Emma met her eyes. But after what happened yesterday, every visit has to make Zach feel safe. Bella's expression hardened. Are you using his allergic reaction as an excuse to keep our family away from him? Emma shook her head. No, your family turned what should have been a simple visit into a fight over a child. Bella took a slow breath. You hid Zach for almost 5 years. You're not innocent either. Emma nodded. I never said I was. Bella looked at her. Then what gives you the right to judge us? Emma answered without hesitation. I'm the one who has raised him since the day he was born. I know what he's allergic to. I know what scares him. I know who he calls for when he's terrified. Bella had no response. Emma reached for the door. When Zach is ready, no one will stop him from knowing his grandparents. But until your family learns to respect his safety and the promises made to him, I won't let anyone put him through that again. She quietly closed the door. 2 days later, Zach was discharged from the hospital, and Emma brought him home. During the first week, Malik never came to see Zach in person. He only sent messages asking how he was doing and apologizing again. Emma ignored most of them. She wasn't cutting him out of Zach's life forever. She just needed time. For Zach and for herself. After the night at the mansion, Zach had become afraid of closed gates. Whenever they walked past a house with a tall iron fence, he would grip Emma's hand tightly. He woke up twice, almost every night, after dreaming that his mother was standing outside while someone refused to let her in. Emma would hold him close and whisper the same words until he calmed down. "Mom's here. No one's keeping me away from you. No one." Zach rested against her. "Will Dad ever take me back to that house?" Emma kissed his hair. "If you don't want to go, nobody can make you." "Will Dad come here instead?" "Yes." "When I'm ready?" "When you're ready." Zach looked up at her. "Will Dad be mad at me?" Emma smiled softly. "No. Where you want to be is never your fault." A week later, Malik came to the apartment building. He didn't go upstairs. Instead, he called Emma and waited outside. She came down alone. He looked noticeably thinner. The stubbornness was still there, but the confidence he once carried had faded. He held out a folder. "These are the papers to legally establish that I'm Zach's father." Emma glanced at them but didn't reach out. "You're filing a lawsuit?" "No. I only want to be legally recognized as his father. And then? I want us to raise him together." Emma looked at him. "Raise him together? Or fight me for him?" Malik stayed silent. Emma turned to leave. "Emma." She stopped without looking back. "I have the right to be his father." Emma faced him again. "I haven't denied that since I told you the truth." She looked him straight in the eye. "But you haven't let me see him." "He ended up in the hospital because you broke our agreement." Malik lowered his head. "It was an accident." "The allergic reaction was an accident. Taking him to the one place I told you not to take him was a choice." Malik said nothing. Emma continued. "You want to be recognized as his father. I won't stand in your way, but don't confuse that with having the right to decide everything." "I don't want to decide everything." Emma gave a faint, humorless smile. "That's exactly what you did the very first time I trusted you to take him out alone." Malik tightened his grip on the folder. "Then tell me what I need to do. First, accept that Zach already had a life before you came back." Malik looked up toward her apartment window. "I want the three of us to live together for a while." Emma thought she had heard him wrong. "What?" "I have another house. Not my parents' mansion. You and Zach could move there. I won't let my parents interfere." Emma stared at him in disbelief. "You actually think I'd agree to that?" "Zach needs both his mother and his father." Emma shook her head. "He needs a father who keeps his promises. He doesn't need his parents pretending to be a happy family." Malik looked at her. "I wouldn't be pretending. I want us back together." Emma let out a quiet laugh. "A week ago, you kept my son inside your parents' house while I stood outside the gate. Now you're asking me to move in with you?" Malik drew a slow breath. "I know I was wrong." Emma held his gaze. "That mistake showed me exactly how you still see Zach." Malik frowned. "What do you mean? You still see him as the way to get me back? That's not true." "Then answer this. If I never came back to you, would you still ask Zach to live with you?" Malik couldn't answer. Emma continued. "Do you want time with your son because he needs you? Or because you can't accept that I said no?" Malik's expression hardened. "You always assume the worst about me." "No. I'm judging you by what you've done." He took a step closer. "You took away my chance to be a father for almost 5 years. Now you want to decide how often I see him, where I see him, and how long I get to stay with him." Emma looked at him for a long moment. "I'm protecting the stable life he's already built." Malik frowned. "You still don't understand." "Understand what?" "I admitted that hiding Zach from you was wrong, but my mistake doesn't make everything you've done since then right." Malik turned away. "If you won't agree, then I'll ask the court to set a parenting schedule." Emma remained calm. "Do what you believe is right." Her calmness only frustrated him more. "You're not afraid?" Emma looked directly at him. "I used to be so afraid of your family that I told you my baby had died. The night I stood outside those gates, I realized something. The more afraid I was, the more control I handed over to all of you." She stepped closer. "I'm not running anymore." Malik met her eyes. "You really think you'll win?" Emma shook her head. "This isn't a competition. At least not for me. I've had Zach by my side for almost 5 years. But for you?" She paused. "Has this been about being his father? or about winning? Malik didn't answer. Emma turned and walked toward the building. Before she disappeared inside, she looked back one last time. Do you want to be Zach's father? Or do you just want to beat his mother? That evening, Malik returned to the Miller mansion. David had already invited a lawyer over. Several folders were spread across the coffee table, filled with information about Emma's income, apartment, and work schedule. As soon as Malik walked in, David spoke. I've already had someone look into her situation. She rents her apartment. Her income isn't stable. Her work hours change all the time. If we have to prove who can provide the better home for Zach, we won't lose. Malik looked at the files. You investigated her? I prepared. David folded his arms. You still haven't said whether you're going to bring Zach home. Malik looked at his father. I never said I wanted to take him away from Emma. David frowned. Then what are you waiting for? Bella spoke quietly from the sofa. He's your only son. Everything this family has will belong to him one day. David nodded. He's not even 5 years old yet. The younger he is, the easier it is to shape him. Malik turned to his mother. Shape him into what? Bella answered. At the very least, he should grow up knowing he's part of the Miller family. He already knows who his family is. He even carries his mother's last name. David slammed his hand against the table. Don't forget who you are. Malik looked straight at him. I've spent my whole life being reminded who I am. Maybe that's why I never learned how to be a father. The room went silent. David stood up. Are you really going to let Emma call all the shots? She's not leading me anywhere. She hid your son from you, and now you're blaming your own parents? Malik nodded once. What she did was wrong. He paused before continuing. What we did was wrong too. David frowned. It was one night. Malik met his father's eyes. One night was enough to send Zach to the hospital. Bella tried to defend herself. That was an accident. Malik slowly shook his head. Everyone keeps calling the outcome an accident so they don't have to face the decision that caused it. David pushed one of the folders toward him. Are you filing for custody or not? Malik didn't touch it. I need time. Time for what? David demanded. I don't want to take Zach away from his mother. David let out a cold laugh. So you're willing to spend the rest of your life standing outside your own son's life? Malik answered calmly. Being a father doesn't mean forcing your child to live in this house. David's expression hardened. You're starting to sound exactly like Emma. Malik turned toward the door. David called after him. If you won't do it, I will. Malik stopped without turning around. You don't have that right. I'm his grandfather. Malik looked back. A grandfather doesn't get to see Zach without his parents' permission. David stared at him. You're telling me I can't see my own grandson? Malik answered evenly. I'm setting the boundaries I should have set a long time ago. He walked out without another word. Teresa had heard the entire conversation from the staircase. She waited until everyone had left the living room before walking downstairs. The folders about Emma were still open on the coffee table. One document outlined a legal strategy built around her income, housing, and work schedule to pressure her in a custody case. Teresa slowly turned the pages. At the back of the file was a transcript of David's discussion with the lawyer. One paragraph made her stop. If the child can be brought into the Miller household and kept there long enough to establish a stable routine, contact with the mother should be limited during the early adjustment period. Once the child is no longer emotionally dependent on his mother, future arrangements will become much easier. Teresa read the paragraph again. No longer emotionally dependent on his mother. In other words, they wanted Zach to gradually forget Emma. Teresa couldn't stop thinking about the image of Zach sitting on the bed, hugging his backpack while listening to the recording of his mother's voice. A heavy feeling settled in her chest. She took out her phone and photographed every page of the file. The next afternoon, she asked Malik to meet her at a coffee shop. When he arrived, she placed her phone on the table and opened the photos she had taken in the living room. Malik stared at the screen without moving. Where did you get these? From our living room. Why are you showing me this? Teresa looked at him quietly. Because you're still lying to yourself. You keep telling yourself your parents only want to love their grandson. Malik didn't answer. Teresa continued. Maybe they do love Zach, but they love him in a way that makes them want him to belong to them. Malik locked the screen and set the phone down. What do you want in return? Teresa let out a quiet laugh. What is why? What is why? You still think I have to want something? Malik looked at her without speaking. She turned toward the window. I'm not even sure why I'm doing this. After a long pause, she said, maybe it's because, for the first time, I saw a child who was just as scared as I used to be. Malik remained silent. Teresa looked back at him. I wanted to keep Zach at the mansion that night. Malik slowly raised his head. Teresa didn't avoid his eyes. I thought, if he stayed with the Miller family, your parents would need me. I thought you wouldn't be able to divorce me so easily. Malik looked at her in surprise. You wanted to use him to keep our marriage together? Yes. The answer came so quickly that he had no response. Teresa lowered her eyes. But when he looked at me and said I wasn't his mother, I finally understood something. She paused. Even if I kept him in that house forever, I could never become the person he needed. Teresa slowly took off her wedding ring and placed it on the table. Malik stared at it. You want a divorce? I haven't filed yet. Then, what do you want? Teresa looked straight at him. Before you do anything else, answer one question. Malik waited. Teresa spoke slowly. Do you want to be Zach's father? Or do you just want to beat Emma? Malik didn't answer. It was the second time in 2 days that 2 different women had asked him the exact same question. And both times, he had no answer. Nearly a month later, Emma and Malik met for their first formal discussion about Zach's care. Emma didn't stand in the way of Malik completing the legal process to establish paternity. The DNA test confirmed that he was Zach's biological father. Before any court decision, both sides were encouraged to reach an agreement on their own, with Zach's emotional well-being and daily routine taking priority. Emma brought Winter with her. Malik came alone. David and Bella were there as well, but they remained outside the meeting room because they had no authority to make decisions on Malik's behalf. Zach wasn't present during most of the meeting. A child specialist spent a short time speaking with him privately to better understand how he felt and what he wanted. When Zach returned, he sat close beside Emma. Malik looked at his son but didn't call out to him. The mediator smiled gently. Zach, do you know why everyone is here today? Zach shook his head. Mom said the grown-ups are talking about how I'll see Dad from now on. Do you want to see your dad? Zach looked at Malik. Yes. Would you like to spend the night at your dad's house? Zach immediately shook his head. Why not? Zach reached for Emma's hand. I don't want to sleep in the house with the gate. The room fell silent. The mediator spoke softly. La. Can you tell me why you don't like that house? Zach lowered his head. I kept calling for Mom, but she couldn't come in. Malik slowly tightened his hands on his knees. The mediator continued. Are you afraid of your dad? Zach thought about it for a moment. When Dad's happy, no. But when Dad gets mad, he doesn't listen to me. Malik quietly turned his face away. David had been watching through the glass wall outside the meeting room. When he saw Malik remain silent, he stood up and walked inside. He's still a child. He doesn't understand what's best for him. Adults have to make those decisions. The mediator raised a hand politely. Sir, we'd like the parents to handle this discussion. David ignored the request. Our family can give him everything he needs. A better school, a better home, a better future. Emma didn't argue. Bella stepped forward. We're not trying to keep his mother away from him. We just want him to grow up where he truly belongs. Zach moved even closer to Emma. Watching his son do that, Malik remembered the conversation he'd had with his father in the living room. Children get used to things after a while. He used to dream about hearing Zach call him Dad. But if the price of that dream was making his son forget the woman who had raised him, what would that word even mean? David turned toward him. Malik, say something. Are you really going to let your son keep living in a rented apartment under someone else's last name? Malik looked at his father. He's not carrying someone else's last name. He's carrying his mother's. David's face hardened. You're still defending her? This isn't about defending anyone. Then what are you going to do? Malik looked at Zach. The little boy was looking back at him with a mixture of hope and caution. He remembered the first time Zach had called him Dad beneath the rope ladder. Dad, catch me. Zach had trusted him to be there. Then, the first time Emma trusted him to take Zach out alone, he became the one who made his son afraid. Malik turned to the mediator. I agree that Zach should continue living with his mother. David immediately cut in. What did you just say? Malik continued without looking at him. I'll see my son on a schedule that fits his daily routine and emotional needs. For now, there won't be any overnight visits. Any changes will be discussed with his mother first. She's manipulated you. David's voice echoed across the room. Malik remained calm. I'd also like my parents not to contact Zach or take him anywhere without permission from both of us. Bella stared at him. You're stopping us from seeing our grandson? Malik finally looked at them. I'm setting those boundaries to protect my son. David slammed his hand on the table. You'll regret this one day, Malik answered quietly. I already regret what I've done. He turned toward Emma. I'm not asking the three of us to live together anymore. Emma said nothing. Malik continued. And I won't use being his father to ask you for anything. Then he faced his parents again. I can't take my son away from the person he trusts most and call that love, David stormed out. Bella stood there for a few seconds before following him. The meeting room became quiet. Only Emma, Malik, Zach, and the mediator remained. Zach tugged gently on Emma's sleeve. Mom, can we go home now? Emma smiled and nodded. Yes. Zach stood up. Before leaving, he looked at Malik. Dad, are we still going to see the trains together? Malik froze for a moment. His eyes turned red. If you want to, Zach smiled. But you'll take me home afterward? Malik nodded. I promise. I'll always take you home. That evening, Malik returned to the house he and Teresa had shared. Part of her belongings had already been packed into suitcases. Divorce papers lay on the coffee table beside her wedding ring. Malik picked them up and looked at her. You've made up your mind? I have. Because of Zach? Teresa shook her head. Not entirely. That child only helped me see this marriage for what it really was. Malik lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. Teresa smiled faintly. Sorry because you never loved me? Malik didn't answer. She looked at him calmly. That wasn't completely your fault. I knew you didn't love me, and I married you anyway. Malik sat down across from her. I didn't treat you well. Teresa nodded. Neither did I. She folded her hands on her lap. I spread rumors about Emma. I tried to make you feel guilty. I thought that if Zach came to live with the Miller family, I could turn him into the reason you wouldn't leave me. Malik looked at her in silence. Why are you telling me all this now? Teresa looked at the wedding ring on the table. Because I don't want to walk away from this marriage pretending I'm only the victim. She paused before continuing. My parents left me behind when I was a child, but that pain never gave me the right to hurt someone else. Malik picked up a pen and quietly signed the divorce papers. When he finished, he placed the pen on the table. Where will you go? I don't know yet. He hesitated. If you ever need, Teresa gently cut him off. Don't offer me money the way you've tried to solve everything else. Malik froze. That wasn't what I meant. I know. Teresa stood up and picked up her suitcase. At least this time, let's not turn saying goodbye into another transaction. Teresa rolled her suitcase toward the front door. Malik called after her. Teresa? She stopped but didn't turn around. Thank you for opening the gate that night. She stood there quietly for a few seconds before answering. I didn't do it for you. You know that. I do. Teresa opened the door and walked out. The house fell completely silent. Malik remained alone in the living room. The unfinished model train was still sitting on the coffee table. Under the glass top was the small note Zach had written for him. Dad, finish the rest. Malik stared at the note for a long time. Then he slowly reached for the box, took out each piece one by one, and began putting the train together from the beginning. 5 years ago, Emma ran away with the child growing inside her because she knew she could never stand against the power of the Miller family. 5 years later, she came back. Not because she had become wealthier or more powerful, but because she had found a different kind of strength. It was the strength that comes from a mother determined to protect the child she carried and gave birth to, no matter the cost. People may question the choices she made when she was young. They may see her decisions about love, marriage, or becoming a mother differently. But no one can deny the love she had for her son, or the way she fought to keep him safe. As for Zach's father, choosing to stay in a loveless marriage while bringing the child he had with another woman into the life of his wife showed little respect for that marriage. Even later, while he was still married, his hesitation, his selfishness, and his hope of winning back his first love through their son were choices that cannot be defended. Even so, his love for Zach was real. The problem was that love alone couldn't teach him how to be a father. Wanting to make up for the past doesn't automatically earn that place. Becoming a father worthy of a child's trust is something a person has to grow into. Sometimes, becoming the parent your child needs begins with becoming a better version of yourself. No one in this story is perfect. No one is entirely right or entirely wrong. The only truly innocent person is a little boy who simply longs for a family where he feels loved, safe, and never has to wonder whether the people he loves will disappear. Maybe that's why stories like this never really feel like fiction. Because somewhere around us, every day, there are parents still learning how to love, children hoping to be understood, and families trying, one mistake at a time, to find their way back to each other.